Hello, my name's Charlie Winston, and this is my podcast called As We Are, which is inspired by my most recent album, As I Am. It's discussions with people who interest me and inspire me. Some of those people you may know, but others you may never have heard of. But that's not the point, you see, because I'm simply interested in people. So, without further ado, I shall let you discover this episode. Take me as I am. The following conversation is with Jan Welters, who is a photographer who does fashion, portraits and advertising. He's worked with advertising clients such as Dior, Nike, H&M, Mango, L'Oréal Paris, and he's taken photos of celebrities such as Keira Knightley, Kate Blanchett, Helen Mirren, Jennifer Lawrence, Nick Cave, Kylie Minogue, and also designers such as Jean-Paul Gaultier, Giorgio Armani, Marc Jacobs. The list goes on, but I had the chance and the honour to work with him. He took the front cover photo for my album, and it was a great experience to meet the man and work with him. We got along very, very well, and he told me quite an incredible story about his life, which he wasn't at first ready to share with me on this podcast, but then a couple of weeks ago he called me and said he'd changed his mind and he wanted to share his story. So I feel incredibly honoured to share this with you and to have his trust and to be able to talk about not just that, but also our working relationship that we found and what that was like, to explain a little bit deeper the parameters of the album that I've made. So here is my conversation with Jan Welters. Hi Jan.
Hey.
Hey.
Nice to see you. Nice
to be here. Thanks a lot for hosting the podcast in your house.
Absolutely, with pleasure.
I had a nice drive down the coast of southern coast of France to get here, and it's really nice to be here. But I should just say that, like, first off, that we met through our first photo shoot.
Yep. Thanks to Natalie Noenek.
Exactly. And it was a great day. It was a great day for us to just, we spent a lot of time chatting actually and getting to know each other quite quickly, which was great. But I'm going to jump straight in actually with you, because we've been resisting from talking about too much since I arrived. But I just want to ask you, like, the two first songs on my album, as you just saw, were All That We Are and Algorithms, and you've been a photographer since like the 1960s, and is that correct?
Yeah,
70s.
Let's say, yeah. I was born in 63.
You were born, sorry. Okay, yeah. I just did a little bit of painting too long a picture, but anyway, like how have things changed in terms of people and the way that we communicate and who we are? Like, have you seen a big difference over the?
Very big, yeah. Because talking about photography, when I started, I was assisting a very professional photographer, and it was all about lights and exposure and how to develop film and how to expose it so you could only push it a quarter stop. We only worked on slides, so that was even harder, which I started to do myself as well. So I think when I started, it was a real profession. Like, you had to know a lot of things before you could actually be a photographer, which I, little by little learned, and that kept on going for, I don't know, years and years and years. And then it started to go to digital. I worked a lot on these 665 Polaroids that have negatives. So we washed those negatives and kept them. And for instance, that big print over there is one of those negatives. But that was all.
Yeah, with the border around.
Absolutely,
that's
absolutely.
the real thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but all that was gone the moment digital started. And in a way that was good, because the procedure of Polaroids is very dirty and not at all good for the environment. So digital was much better. And little by little, I actually embraced digital. But going on and on and on and on, the iPhone came, Instagram came, COVID came. So the whole business now has changed. And on top of it, my agent, me, we're from a generation that now there's younger people booking the jobs. You know, it's like a whole new generation that works with people that never had this experience before. So, I'd say a lot has changed, a lot. And
it's interesting, if I could interject, it's interesting you mentioned Instagram, because I interviewed another photographer whom I lived with in the 1990s, and German guy, the guy I told you about, who saw the photo, the front cover. And he mentioned Instagram like it was more that particular platform, which was more of a threat to photographers than perhaps Facebook or Twitter, for example. Is that the case, or is that just?
I think for young photographers right now, it's wonderful, because it's their only way of showing their work. Books don't exist anymore. Portfolios, websites hardly exist. It's just everybody looks at Instagram. Like, I remember the job we did, and Nathalie was asked, like, you really want to do it with him, or do you want to work with one of those younger guys? Like, and she said, no, I want to do it with him. Yeah. But she's also from my or our generation. Yeah. So I think that's also a bit of the problem, is like you're being replaced by a whole new generation, and I love that. I really, really love that. Right, like, okay. It's you know, it's perfect. That's how the world rolls, and
of course that's how we get the opportunities at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. Like in the beginning, I had no family, I had no mortgage. I just pulled the door behind me, and I was free. And that's how I lived my life for a very long time, actually. Past I was 40, say. Right. I had my first child, Jaya, when I was 43. Okay. That was So yes, it definitely changed.
So, in the context of all that we are, as a portrait photographer, you're
portrait and fashion and advertising. Yeah.
Sorry, of course. But I'm saying, just within this question, like, as a portrait photographer, you're capturing people, you know, and over time, do you find yourself seeing different things? Who are you looking at, like, these days compared to before?
I think my strong point is that I don't create anything. I like to photograph the people being relaxed, and photograph them as they are. I never use makeup or hair to turn them into something else. It's like, and that's what I've actually always done.
Yeah.
It's just when I was living in LA, it was, you know, Cameron Diaz and here it's another French person that no one knows.
Do you see a difference
across the border?
Right. Do you see a difference between capturing a celebrity to capturing someone who hasn't had that experience?
Capturing a celebrity is hard to ask them something, you know. It's like I let it kind of happen and shoot meanwhile. Yeah. And with a girl, like a model, it's easier to have them do things.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
More than men?
More than men, male models too.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
But you're talking about celebrity, you mean?
Yeah, no, but with the celebrity, it's harder to ask them to do things. I let them do things by themselves and kind of capture meanwhile and just talk. How do you feel? Where do you come from?
Okay, so
why are we here? What movie have you done recently? It's like that.
So are they with non-celebrities, people who are less self-aware, let's say, in that sense, are you doing more to kind of coax them into
sometimes you work with 16-year-old girls that have no idea. They kind of get a little nervous, and you try to make them feel cool, and you have to tell them everything, like to move a finger a little bit and to and that gets you into doing an interesting image sometimes.
Yeah, right.
But there's also young women of 30, 40 that are still models, but they know it all, kind of,
Right. And too much sometimes? Like, I mean...
If I don't like it, too much, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you mean if you don't like it?
Because sometimes they do stuff that I really don't like to see, so I try and keep that down.
Can you give me an example?
God, it's difficult. I just said Cameron Diaz, and I don't know why I said it, but she does stuff that I really don't like.
Right. Okay.
Like the big smile and that American kind of.
So you're talking about like things that hide them in a way, because what you said is you're trying to capture people as they are.
Yeah.
And we all have these ways to hide ourselves, don't we? I guess, I mean, we all do, but we don't realize it. But with celebrities, that the poison of a celebrity is that they become over self-aware without realizing it, and then they're giving you everything that isn't them.
True.
I don't know.
True.
I mean, I'm kind of saying that from experience as well, because it's something that I'm not a big fan of either. I try everything in my power to avoid that. But still, I'm caught out by it. I'm still, in little ways, maybe not in ways that people see, and often ways that I don't see myself. It's usually in hindsight that I'll go, oh, why did I do that? Why was I do? And also just in conversation, like in these podcasts, I'm listening to myself after saying, what are you saying? And I've forgotten that I'd said stuff. Or it's so interesting how we kind of, I think, as we were talking about earlier on with your wife, the unconscious mind is ever present and very powerful for us. But so it comes down to like protection. There's a song called Overprotective, and it's, I'm making an observation about somebody who I think's being way overprotective with themselves and their children and their life, and I'm sort of criticizing that in the song, only to then come to the conclusion that I'm being overprotective by calling them overprotective. Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to and it's actually resonating something in me that I don't like about myself. That's my own personal lesson. I don't explain that in the song, but do you think there's an element? I mean, you must have to deal with a lot of overprotection with people when you get into a studio and they're, you have to wait for them to open up a bit, or.
Yeah.
I mean, did you find that with me, for example?
Not at all.
Oh.
Not at all. That was the big surprise, actually, because I didn't know what I was gonna do, and I think from the first moment on, it went really well.
Yeah.
You listened to what I wanted. Yeah. But you also had your own ideas. No, I think that went very, very well. But sometimes it's like either people are nervous or they need some kind of setup. Like I put either a table or something there to and talk. I just talk and shoot and talk and shoot. Bit like what we did, and And there's all kinds of people that, like I just saw Loudoyon, and she's like a rocket. She's like
on fire.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
girl is on fire.
And she doesn't need much, you know. It's like.
Yeah. But I think for some of us performers and people in the limelight, it can sometimes be also a trick that we can play easily. I mean, I grew up in a hotel, so my parents were both singers. I saw them sing often in lock-ins, and that before we were born, they were travelling folk singers, you know. And my dad's a very big performer, and my brothers and sisters were all singers. And growing up in a hotel, you're kind of on stage all the time. So I learnt how to do the things which could turn people on, like I told you earlier on about being a people pleaser. You know, it's like you know what to do to, and also I get something out of it. You know, that joy. I don't just mean selfishly getting something out of it, but in a way, it's like there's a coming to the photo session that we did. I've never done something quite as basic as that in my life, and it was interesting. I mean, when I say that doesn't mean to demean your work by saying basic. I mean candid. Candid is what I meant to say. I've never, especially about myself, there's always been an element of theatricality around things I do, especially if you look from my first album, Hobo. I mean, Hobo was a kind of a character that I
absolutely
consciously or unconsciously constructed, and it feels like over time I've just been sort of chipping away at the block to take away.
But this was a good title as well.
Yeah,
it's the perfect picture for the title of the album.
Exactly, but it was interesting when we had that conversation about, I mean, way later after I'd chosen the picture and everything, and the reason I'd chosen that picture, and you had other preferences, but the reason I chose that one, I wasn't even comfortable fully with it, except to say that when I looked at it, I saw very deeply myself in a way that I would when I just look in the mirror without any kind of like pretenses, no one's around. And when I showed it to Thomas Peter, who I interviewed, also my other photographer friend who shoots for Reuters, so he's a photojournalist, very different to what you're doing. I was so blown away by his response when I showed him the photo on my big screen in my house, because he literally just stepped back a bit and went, wow, like that. And he was like, how did he take that photo? And he was really asking me like what we did in terms of lighting and everything. He was really blown away by its efficacy. And that's when I knew that I'd seen your CV, as it were, of all the stuff you've done and over the years and everything. But it's always very, very affirming when you get another photographer who can appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It's always a nice accolade, I imagine.
Yeah.
So
it's funny you mentioned that, because I used to always kind of be a bit threatened if I saw something that was either better or different. And I completely lost that now. I can just be completely relaxed, give compliments here and there. It's really nice for me to actually appreciate other people's work, and that's also been wasn't really always the case.
Yeah. Do you think it's because you weren't fully appreciative of your own work or self? Do you think there's an element of that?
Maybe.
Because I for myself, that's the learning curve I'm on, is to understand that for the need of other people's approval, it's only saying something about me. It's not saying something about, you know. And when I'm aware of that, I have to kind of turn the camera around, you know, the internal camera around, and say what's going on here. But it's a funny thing, the need for approval. I think. There's a song called "Open My Eyes," and it's relevant to being a photographer, because that's what we do, you know, or that's what you do. You open people's eyes to something, or hopefully that's the aim, is that you're trying to open the door. In the case of taking a photo of, a person, you're trying to capture something about their soul. Is it for you the eyes? Is it through the eyes, or is there something else going on?
I think it's a whole look, you know. I think it's the whole kind of stamina that they have. Like, I'm not really into the cliche blonde model. I'm more into something that's a bit off, something that, and then sometimes it's the eyes, sometimes it's the nose, sometimes it's, you know.
Yeah.
But it's more like an overall image of someone, and that's why I also don't want to change too much, because I cast very precisely on the person I like.
What do you mean you cast very precisely?
I choose them very, very precisely. Like I cast, I choose my girls, because I hardly do men, by the way.
Okay.
And that's how I then shoot them after. Like, sometimes you give them a little shorter hair, but mainly I just, that's who I like to photograph.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, nothing really particular. It's you know, sometimes it's the eyes though. But did you, the body shape, like sometimes a girl's really skinny and long, and sometimes she's more chubby.
But I guess you're looking for a story, like we all are. I mean, and if it's more of a cliched thing, I mean, of course it's taste as well. But when you've got someone who's a bit off, or there's more of a story, and there's also something more human about it, in the sense that it's irreplaceable. You can't repeat it in the same way. But your wife is also kind of coming from the same industry, and she has her own label as well, right?
Yeah, she did. She had a label called Superfine, and those were the most incredible jeans, honestly.
Right. Jeans as in like trousers to wear?
Yes, yes. But like...
You're not talking about her parents?
No, no, sorry. She was adopted, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, God,
so she doesn't have an idea about her jeans. No, jeans as in trousers. But to make a long story short, the label was very successful. She's been how do you say, people think that she was the first one to bring back the skinny jean, and it wasn't really her. It was coincidentally with Hedy Slimane, I think it was.
Okay.
But all at the same time.
Yeah.
And that became very successful. Like overnight, it was like a $1 million business.
Wow.
But there was a lot of people wanted a piece of the cake.
Right. Yeah.
So, and they were just two young girls, Flora and her. So they were just ripped off right away.
Oh.
So, but the product itself, it couldn't have been better. Honestly, it was gorgeous. And so every time I worked with a famous model, I asked if she could do a pair of jeans, and they never said no. So, and we did all these lookbooks, fantastic lookbooks, and they were fun to do because we had the same taste pretty much, and they were always turned out really well designed, because we had this design house in London that made them always even better than they were. So every collection was a success, until she found that the people that sell it, they always want to have more, and it had like a subline, and that's where it all went wrong. You know, she then wanted to have a sustainable label.
I see.
And that's before the word sustainable was even trendy. Like now it's the trendiest thing, but when I heard her say it for the first time, it was like, wow, yeah, that's a good thing to do.
Oh, that's interesting. So she was...
I hope I was clear.
Very,
Okay.
very perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah, a bit too clear actually. No, I'm joking. No, but I mean, I was thinking about, having our eyes opened, and that song is very much about my wife and I, or being together as a team. And it's interesting to hear you talk about being a team together, because I think in a great relationship, it's often about, I sing, "Open my eyes because I'm here for you, lover." It's like saying, I'm going to stay here and I'm ready to receive what you've got to give me, good or bad. And it sounds like you've been through that together.
Absolutely. And actually, those days were fantastic. Like, we really worked together very, very well. Like, people were surprised, like, that we never had any fights or irritations, which is crazy, because normally we have those things in our daily life, but not when you both concentrate only on your work.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was great.
Yeah. Do you ever go through moments of holding each other back, or have there been? That can be tough sometimes in relationships. We go through periods of everything's moving in the same direction, but I think what I'm learning, the most challenging thing about a long-term relationship is when you find yourself going in different directions.
And that now with Portugal, for instance, because I like it here, but
in France.
But I give in also because I know her vision. I know what she thinks about French people. I know she's right. I mean, I'm happy here. I'm happy in Aix-en-Provence. I can easily go to Paris back and forth. From Lisbon, that will be a little bit harder.
So just explain a little bit for the listeners, what you're talking about.
So,
Because you moved from...
Yeah. First of all, we were in the States. Then we were in Paris. Then we moved to the States. Then we left the States to go back to France, because there were certain reasons about what COVID did to society and the poverty and the ridiculously expensive insurance and school fees and endless, So we decided to go back to France, and we chose Aix-en-Provence because we thought that we could buy a house here. We sold the house in Topanga. But it wasn't easy like that. And she also started to be annoyed with France.
Okay.
Because nothing really works here. Nobody really likes to work. It's all of that. And so she...
Compared to what you're used to in the States, for example.
Yeah.
It's a very different mentality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So then she met a person that showed her a house in Malveira da Serra, which is a town very close to Lisbon.
Yeah.
And she fell in love with it. And but it's a house that still has to be built. And for me, that was in the beginning. It was a bit like, but now I completely understand. We just came back, and it's beautiful there. Also beautiful. It's on the Atlantic coast, so it's a lot cooler there.
Yeah.
And it's perfect for us. The surfing, the skating is great, but also, so I see why she wants to go, and I just go with her. It's like, she followed me, I follow her, and but it's true what you say, when you have that kind of
moving a separation,
exactly.
of thought, desires.
It's sometimes you follow each other, and I think also that's why you stick together. That's really what a long-term relationship is. It's a choice. It's a choice to either do it or don't do it, and we've just always have done it.
Yeah, exactly.
And but you have to,
there's got to be compromises made along the way. It's trying to find that balance whereby you're giving over, you're not giving, but you're giving enough to that person in a sense of love as a verb. I'm going to love you by doing this, but we have to protect ourselves as well in terms of what the sort of minimum of what we need as well. And if you can find those things, but still be able to give what they need, then that's when it works. I mean, it doesn't always work for everyone, but I say I've seen a space between our love and the place is greener, meaning, you know, there's our love, the way we love each other. There's the way life could be if it was perfect and utopian.
Yeah.
But there's a place in between those two places, and that's kind of where a good relationship exists, where you're sort of, you know, dipping in and out of the place is greener and the real life of what's actually in front of you, because in that space is where you can kind of build a life, which is what you're doing by moving.
Another good thing also is that she knows the business.
Right.
Every other woman would have been, how do you say, jealous of me spending time with all these beautiful girls and celebrities and actresses, but she knows that that's just normal. She knows that for her that is just how the business works. So.
But I guess it's a combination of trust over the years.
That's true.
Huge amounts of trust, and like you say, knowing the business. It makes a huge difference for me that my wife came on tour with me. We met in LA. She was living there for 4 years, and then when we met, I was doing my second album in LA, and then the only way really to stay together was that if I moved to LA, which at the time wasn't very practical, so I was just creating some businesses in England, or she come on tour with me. And so she came on tour with me, and really that was the best setup for our relationship, because now she's got no reason to not believe me when I say, you know, I'm doing this, I've got to go and have lunch now and meet this person, then after that I'm going to go and just relax for a bit, and she knows that 10 seconds, you know, half an hour of relaxing is actually time I have to switch off and just do whatever I want to do. And it's not, she has no suspicion that I'm doing something other than what I say I'm doing, you know, but it's building that trust. It comes over time, I think, and also through knowing the business, like you say. But I guess you've been
before she was a designer, she was a stylist,
right?
That's how we met, actually, and that was fun. That was a great year before our first kid was born.
Oh, so you were working together as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And were you actually sort of intimately involved during that year?
That started then.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of the kind of lives like this, you know, when you're in a kind of industry which requires people and a lot of interactions between people. I won't just call it creative industries, because I'm sure it spreads out over other industries as well. But it does require a certain understanding. But I guess you've had your challenges too.
Yeah.
And I know there's been some kind of, you know, storms, as referring to my song "This Storm Too Shall Pass," but also it's another song, "Shifting Paradigms," and you've had to shift the way you see life in a big way. Like, has that been something that you've experienced with your wife? And did that
very much so, actually?
And did that hold you back, or how did that change? Did you have to change your relationship?
I think it made it even more strong, because it was always kind of like fun, really.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, when I was diagnosed with brain cancer, she really stepped up, and we were in Australia.
Yeah.
And from one day to the next, my life just tumbled. Like, it was I was told I had a really bad tumor called a glioblastoma, and the surgeon, they were like, that's not happening. We have to get another second opinion.
Really? Because it's rare?
Huh?
Because it's rare?
No, because it's horrible. You'd be dead within 3 months.
Ah, I see.
That's why.
That's what you were...
Yeah.
Okay, looking at. Okay.
Yeah. And
And this is how long ago?
This is 12 years ago.
Right.
So just to continue the story.
Please do.
And then, so I was upstairs on medication because I just was too stressed to deal with anything, and her. She and her girlfriends, and there was a whole bunch of them, all 6 of them, I think, were trying to get in contact with the real kind of controversial but also famous Charlie Teo, who is also Australian. And finally they did it, and I think we flew from where we were in the Paradise Cove to Sydney, and he looked at the scans and he's like, well, that's not a glioblastoma, that's blah 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 blah, and I can easily operate it, and that's what he did. So now after all these years, I am on a new point. Maybe I go to...
No.
Should I?
was talking about shifting... Say whatever you want.
Yeah. Because I'm just also... I forget a lot of things that after the operation I couldn't speak. I had all kinds of vision problems because he's known for going very, very, very far.
Yeah.
Like you have to also sign all these papers. Like if I lose my...
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
This particular surgeon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what recently happened is that after the 7 years, 8 years that it was in between, the last oncologist in Marseille said, okay, now I see a significant change. We have to do something now. And he came up with all kinds of chemo and other therapies that would be what his idea. And then I took Lucy to the next meeting, and we decided to have 3 second opinions.
This is your wife.
Yeah.
To be sure.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's all right.
So the first one was the former oncologist in... Hey, shh.
I think he's heard this story before.
in a better way explained as well.
No, she's completely... I'm following you completely.
Yeah. Okay.
So
really?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I just to keep it on track. He was asking you to sign a lot of papers to get you to make sure that you
I agreed when I couldn't speak anymore, because he does this thing that he tries to get as much as the tumor out as possible.
Yeah. Okay.
Which was
quite invasive.
Yeah, because it was this big. It was like a big ball.
Wow.
And I think at the time he got about 95% out. But as a result,
that is an enormous amount.
I couldn't hardly speak, and it took me a long time to get back to life. Let me just take care of him, because I think it's time for his food.
Okay.
So
I'll pause it.
Yeah. Perfect. Let's just go back to when I was diagnosed and operated. And I had quite a bad experience with that operation. And the surgeon said to me, and he looked me in the eyes, and he said, I promise you, you're going to be right again. You're going to be the old Jan again. But there's a few things that you have to do. It's like you can't eat any meat. You can't drink alcohol, and no cigarettes. And no Wi-Fi, which is quite funny because...
No Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I think these things are the new cigarettes, honestly, the iPhones.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's when we both changed our lives. And it took me a long time to get over that feeling, over that. Gave me... I was very... I don't know, I didn't have much confidence. But one thing he said as well is you have to go back to your usual life as soon as possible. And I was operated in September, and I did my first job in December.
Wow.
So I really tried that, and I think that's also what saved me, because I was so... But the good thing was as well is that before I was just obsessed with my work, and it kind of just took that kind of obsession away in a way that it was good. For me, I knew that there was something else that was much more important.
What is that?
The life, just living, being alive.
Mm.
And then little by little, when all of it's gone, it's funny also because there was a big hole in my brain, but the other part takes over.
Yeah.
And you can start speaking again and thinking logically. And
so could we say that you were forced to see life from a new perspective?
That's very true.
Or through a new lens, which would be putting it in your with a new filter.
Yeah.
Or
definitely.
Had you ever made that correlation between
Never. No.
being a photographer and changing lenses and and having to do that in your life?
Yeah, no, never. It was a complete shock. But what brought it on was a really big seizure, and that I think I had for a long time already. Like I recognized it, but in a much
more gradual way.
Yeah, exactly. I always thought it was like some nervous thing, and that's also what, to me, it was like, okay, if this is now, I have a long time before it grows again. But after 11 years, now my new oncologist, he's in Marseille, said that he compared like the old scans from 2017, for instance, to the new ones, and he sees a significant difference. So he says that we have to treat this, and he gave us a few options as well, and I decided to show it to the old oncologist that I had in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But also to the guy that operated me in the first place. And that was the interesting part, because he said, oh, it's gotten really big again. And but I can operate it. I can operate it again. And he gave me the 5th of September in Madrid. And then I thought, I don't want that. I don't want to have to go through this whole thing again. And I told him that. I was like, okay, because he said it could actually be worse. You know, you could lose your speech, but he's the kind of person that wants people to live the longest.
Right.
And I'm more the quality of life person.
Of course, yeah.
So, and then he told me about this surgeon here in France, in Montpellier, that does these open brain operations where you can actually talk and tell him, okay, stop there. I don't know exactly, because I'm still waiting for the appointment. But that's probably going to happen at the end of September, beginning October, and I hope he also, because you have to look at the scan and decide that it's worth an operation. Because I think also surgeons in general, they just surgeons, so they want to go in, you know. They think that's the best thing to do. Yeah. So if this
it's
guy,
the way they think.
Absolutely, they're just conditioned to think that way.
Yeah, yeah.
And now I remember also why he said I'm the best one to do it, because that's just how they think, and I was lucky because.
Yeah. Give a man a hammer and everything's a nail.
That's true. So true.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
So anyway, that's the point where I am now, and it's funny because I try to block it out, which is my way of dealing with this illness, is that I just don't want to know it. It's like I'm trying not to think about it, which is, according to a lot of people, is wrong. You know, it's very wrong. You have to kind of embrace it and try and get rid of it. with healing or with
confrontation, or not confrontation. Dealing with it face on.
Yeah, and that's also what she said. But she told me it's like now it's time to really, look at it in a different way, because there's the alternative and the Western medication.
Of course, yeah.
And
so have you come around to? Have you changed the way you're approaching this? Is that what you're saying?
I'm trying to, yeah.
And why? I'm trying to. Why do you think that's necessary?
Because it's.
No, I'm not saying it's wrong.
No,
I'm just curious.
I'm not a big fan of chemo, for instance.
For sure.
It's poison.
So.
And because I had a radio and a chemotherapy that actually helped a lot, but if I have to have that again, I don't know. I'm just putting all my hope on the surgeon that does.
But it's got to be interesting for you to have this. I mean, you're doing a lot more self-reflection. I guess it sounds like you're. I mean, when we have things offered to us in modern day medicine and general practice medicine, it's often approaching it in either especially in cancer, very aggressively, and everyone who's talked to me about chemo says it's incredibly aggressive and it really affects your whole life. A good friend of mine, his father had just been through it. But like all the medicines that we have, like me, when I had my most of my life was backache. I spent most of my life on anti-inflammatory drugs of all kinds and paracetamol, and getting treated with this and that kind of medicines, or always feeling like I needed someone out there to help me. Of course, we still do that, but there's got to be an element. Now I've realised it's an element. A big part of it is about just kind of trying to take control back in my own hands a little bit.
And seeing where it comes from, where the pain comes from. Because in Western medicine, it's always trying to deal with the
symptom.
And I think that's wrong.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, symptoms are just like the surface of it. The roots go very, very deep. But what I want to get back to is like how this... you change the relationship you have, firstly with yourself, secondly with your wife and your family.
Yeah, my wife had played a very, very big role in this, organizing, helping me stay on track, because I was a drinker. I just lived, quite rock and roll kind of. So it was not so easy for me to. It's also hard to compare after the operation how you were before, because I wasn't drinking. So but one thing is for sure is that I've never been as happy as I was right now. Like it's really I think it always kind of affected me as well, this tumor. It's been there for a very long time, and it made me, I was only relaxed when I had a few drinks.
Sure, yeah.
Which is probably why I was using alcohol.
Did you worry a lot over these last 12 years? Was there a lot of worry?
In the beginning, yes. In the beginning, because nobody really knew what would happen. Like we got this really conflicting, how do you say? Like when you want to one doctor, he said, okay, no, you're gonna die. It's. And then the other one says, no, it's not growing for the moment.
Yeah.
Until we found this clinic in Germany that we were actually told about by Theo's people, my original surgeon in Australia, and they had an oncologist that said exactly what we wanted to hear. Right. Like it's not growing. It's cool. And they did this blood test that you can see everything on, like a really in-depth blood test.
Wow.
And I stayed there for, I don't know, maybe 2 years before we moved to Los Angeles.
There's this regarding times of health or bad health, and regarding worry. There's also, I think it's sometimes hard when you feel like the whole world's worrying about you if they know. Was that ever a thing for you?
It's hard because people don't talk about it, but I know that they talk about it when I'm not there.
Right.
So, but even that, I'm just trying to block out.
So now you're aware that that you've been trying to block out, and I mean, part of doing this interview or this talk today is overcoming that, right?
Absolutely.
Because originally, when
because I said that he wants to talk about my tumor, and I don't want that. I don't want anybody really to know, and
yeah,
and now when this happened,
when what happened?
When this new part happened, where I have to get operated again, maybe.
I see. That's what you meant by the developments.
Yes, exactly.
So this is a very recent thing then.
This is recent. This was in Portugal.
And from that moment on, you realised I need to be more open about this situation.
Absolutely.
So again,
and also when I told Lucy and Jaya too, it's like why not just be open about it?
Jaya is your son,
my daughter, my
17-year-old
daughter.
Yeah.
And that's also when I thought.
Did it help to have them say that?
A little bit, yeah.
I guess because it's a support network, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And your kids, have they been? I mean, and your dog as well. You said your dog's changed your life as well.
Yes, but I don't want to talk about him now because it's finally.
Yeah.
Calm.
You wake up.
Yeah. No, but the kids, they just feel everything. They know everything. They feel everything. Even if you try not to have them hear it, it's really it's astonishing.
Sorry.
So you can't hold anything back really. They just feel it.
Yeah, and you're open. I mean, it's the moment I walked into the house, I felt this openness of communication between the three of you with Asta.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. Very good.
Son.
Because I'm really bad at names.
And like we all agreed, there's education. Good education helps, but it's got to start. It's got to be in the home as well.
Yeah.
But so we're talking about like a big part of your life, which has been a kind of a whirlwind, a storm that's come into your life. I mentioned storm earlier on because of the song "This Storm Too Shall Pass," and I wrote that as a means of. It was written during COVID, but it wasn't really about COVID. It was also about understanding that in the darkest moments, if you can create some sort of detachment from that experience and not get too wrapped up in all the emotional whirlwinds and worries and all that sort of stuff, then you can still find some sort of sense of peace or happiness within that storm. But do you think that's something you've been learning throughout this, or do you have that?
I think I live more day to day now. You know, like I really treasure the moment. Like the past I use, the future, but it's mainly the day itself that I try to enjoy. Which is not so good because we're building a house in Portugal.
Yeah.
There's a lot more coming. But I think that's the most important thing for me is just living the moment and enjoying what's going on, like the places I am. It's for me that's really the most important thing at the moment.
Does that give you more time with the people you're with?
Yeah. Also, yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask, like, what's been the darkest moment in the storm, in this whirlwind that you've had to brave? Has there been dark moments?
Definitely. Coming back, not being able to speak. We stayed.
So you actually lost entirely your ability?
My
Speech.
Yeah.
For how long?
Little by little, it came back. But I lost a lot of weight. You know, it was like I was a different man, honestly.
Has it changed the way you communicate since, like, before and after? Now that you can speak?
Yes, very much so. And still, I can feel it myself that it's not back, and it will never be back to where it was. I lost a lot of humor.
Humor?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And I feel a lack of how do you say, like, when you care about things.
You're more ambivalent about things. Yeah.
It's really hard to.
You mean passion in terms of being passionate?
Also.
Okay.
I mean, it's better now, but it does make me less. What's the word for it?
Less committed or engaged or invested.
It's not the right word.
It's not the right word. No, I know.
Yeah. But it's that's definitely the case. But little by little, like I said, little by little, I was happy to go to work again at one point, and be with my family. We moved, by the way, during COVID from from
choose your moments
to exactly.
House during COVID.
Yeah,
we
sold the house during COVID
in 2020.
Yeah.
Holy moly!
Yeah.
So the darkest moment was
after the operation,
and losing so much faculties.
Yeah.
I guess
also because I was insecure. I was like, what? I didn't have no idea, or we had no idea what was going to happen. We stayed on a little bit after the operation in Australia because it was easy for me not to have to deal with all the people around me. It was not so easy for Jaya, who was late at school, at a new school for I don't know, like a month. So we all went through a crisis.
Yeah,
but I felt support. I've also felt support from Daniela, my agent, from my friends, from But now I'm again in it. That's the big. It's
sure.
I have to now again go through it and face it, and I think this time I also have to try and talk to it more. Be aware of it.
So just to be really, because I missed something. You're having to go and have another potential operation.
Yeah.
Because I thought you said that it had improved in your brain.
It's okay. That 95% was taken out, and this is 11 years ago. And slowly by slowly, it's grown back.
I see.
And that's what I said about a slow-growing tumor. It's that it grows very, very, very slowly.
Right.
So meanwhile, halfway, I had a radiation and a chemo that kind of made it smaller again, and then it goes back up until now. And now it's more serious because there is also the danger of getting that typical cancer patient thing that I really don't want.
Yeah, being that sort of.
But I was also surprised with my surgeon's reaction, because he was like, it's operable. That's always good that it's operable.
Yeah.
But I hope that the other guy says the same thing.
There's just I just want to touch on something a little bit, because you've talked so much about moving. And I didn't even mention the song Exile, but it seems so relevant to you because you were born and raised in the Netherlands. You left at what age, like 18, 19?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And then lived in New York, and you just lived all over the place. I'm here I am talking about moving from England to France.
Yeah, but you really also lived everywhere. So.
Yeah, well, I have lived around, yeah. But I mean... but you really lived with a family, with a wife, with a dog, moving around.
Yeah.
And have you ever had, or do you have this sense of being in exile or putting yourself in exile. I don't mean, we're using that word lightly. What I mean by that is that it's a self-exile where you're finding your identity in these places you go to. How does that relate to your spirit? And
I think in France I could always deal with it because I always felt a foreigner. Like I wasn't French, and that is easy to deal with all the problems they have. And Lucy does that very much because she never actually even talks to a French person.
Right.
But that's the way I just went through all that time in Paris. I worked with international people. I was am in an international business. It's I hardly had any French friends.
Right.
So it was kind of easy for me to be living in Paris or here because
or LA or New York.
True.
I'm not just
in
talking
LA I was
about
more
France.
part of it. No, exactly. New York I love. I really absolutely love it, and I don't need to be away because I'm right in it. And that's the same for everybody.
Yeah,
there's people from all over, and everybody's just a New Yorker the moment you arrive. Yeah. LA is different. LA is like, it's more
opportunistic attitude.
yeah. It's more,
everyone's your best friend when you're standing in front of them.
Absolutely.
And then try to call them a week later. It's a different
like
story.
That. It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
So,
but do you? I mean, have you ever reflected on being a Dutch person? Do you feel like you have those roots still?
Yes, I never cared about them too much, but now, also because, funny enough, on the IBS, the school where both my kids go to, in X, there's a lot of Dutch people, like an enormous amount of Dutch people. So I get confronted with the Dutch language quite a lot, and now I regret a little bit why I never taught them, and I have my reasons because we were in Paris and Dutch was just, it was only me who spoke it, and but now I have, I kind of regret that because I spend a lot of time with Dutch people now.
Yeah, right. Did it ever play a role? Like, did your Dutchness, has it played a role through or come up in this experience, this last 12 years? Has that been, did your identity
no.
Okay, so
not really. I do think that Dutch people, a little bit like Portuguese people actually, they're like in between the Malibu people and the French people. They're like straight. They're like
pragmatic. Yeah. Down the line.
Yeah.
I read an interesting book actually. I should have brought it for you. Great book on Dutch photography. How it began in photography as the original phonograph was between two places. It was between Italy and inspired by art, Italian art, and then Dutch art, which Dutch art was originally a very, very famous kind of art. It was completely candid. So it's actually no surprise that you're that you're a candid photographer in the sense of finding someone's soul without too many obstacles. Anyway, so I always finish on touching on one last song and with a question. And the song is called Letter from My Future Self. And I've often written letters to myself, posted them, opened them, and kept them as reminders of what's important to me and stuff. But for the first time, I tried to imagine we always like to think that our older selves or people, our elders, are wisest, Not less these days in this generation, because there's generally less respect, I think, for elders.
It's so true as well in the Western world. Like go to like Thailand or they adore older people
and they respect their opinion.
Absolutely, they look up to them, and they here it's like we put them in a.
I think my theory, and it's a very small theory, but my theory is it's a little bit of the symptoms of the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing about the American dream is you are the entrepreneur, you are the master of your own destiny. And so that youthful energy is the most highly respected energy. Being new, doing new things, and young people can be billionaires. And they don't turn their noses up at that. And naturally, over the last 100 years, American culture, and that whole ideology through Hollywood and music and entertainment has kind of permeated through the Western world, as it is the superpower, and it basically bosses everyone around, tells everyone what to do.
Yeah.
And I think that they're also it's a country of adolescent thinking. It's very much, and that unfortunately that's what's kind of the demise of the empire, the American empire, is it's very, with Eminem coming in and basically talking about like exposing all the faults of the country through the music. It's now like evident that just isn't really necessarily working.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's created this disrespect for the aged and life lived, basically. But anyway, to go back to the song, so I wrote that song, Letter from My Future Self, on that premise, and it was hard. But I would like to ask you, what do you think your future self, say in 30 or 40 years, and we are assuming that you'll still be here, what is he going to say to Jan today? It's not easy.
No. I'll do that in the next podcast.
Can I reframe the question? What would you say to your 30-year-old self today?
My 13-year-old?
30-year-old self. What if you were standing, if he walked in the room now, Jan at 30 years old, and you had like an hour with him, and you really wanted to impart something with him, what would you say?
That there was a lot to say about having a family, that I had no idea of, that there's another life behind this life that is absolutely worthwhile living.
Yeah.
And that it's not all about work, because that was the only thing I was doing and having fun. So I don't know if that's the idea. Then if there's anything else when I'm 90, growing older, I guess. And
maybe it's not. Maybe there's nothing to say. Maybe it's just you're doing okay, Jan.
Yeah,
you're doing good.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to me like you are. You've got a great attitude, amazing attitude, just by the very nature that you've agreed to sit down with me and have this chat and record it. It's huge for you. I mean, it's taken you 12 years to get to a point where you can do that. So credit. No,
it was an important decision, and also because now I have to go through another experience. But maybe this time it will be better. I'm really hoping that French dude is going to say, yes, we have to operate. And
well, here's to that. I wish you luck and love for that. Mostly love. Because, like you said, it's about quality, not quantity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for the chat.
No problem. Welcome. Absolutely welcome.
Great.
All right.